Right, time to get on the boat. Sorry for a few moments where I stopped moving forward for a while. The first is there's a hidden minigame that I kind of want to show off, even if I'm not going to bother completing it for any reward. I don't remember exactly which recording session where I actually pull it off, though. I just know I had some failed attempts to get it rolling as I recorded the game. The second is that there is a lot of land, but not a lot of places to actually park our ship. So I kind of need to look at an online map to figure out where to go from here. Now, to a degree, I can actually get away with not checking a map just by sailing near the coast until we find places to land. And whenever I play the Pixel Remaster, that's what I'm willing to do. It can feel like some smooth bit of grinding without actually going out of your way to grind for experience and money. But I've already done some very explicit grinding in this game in this playthrough, so let's just go for a more efficient route for now. Bit annoying that the big eyes thing managed to stun Boromir for a while there. I don't think there's actually a cure for that kind of paralysis other than just waiting it out. Or maybe using something especially expensive and rare like a remedy. So we'll just effectively treat it like Boromir is unconscious since he's not going to be able to contribute for a while. Okay, so the Sangin have around 50 health. Despite the fact that they're gonna be an enemy type that shows up in a lot of Final Fantasies, I severely doubt I'm ever going to remember the name of that specific enemy type. Depending on their appearance in a given game, I might end up calling them fish people or turtle people. It probably says something that we took some free hits from a group that outnumbers us, and I can't find it in me to be all that, concerned, really. Granted, we faced worse odds from those pirates earlier on, but they were even more fragile than these guys. It's just kind of funny that one of the reasons that turn-based games were a thing was to make it more daunting to deal with more enemies since they'd get more hits in on you. But of course they end up making a lot of throwaway threats that can be thrown at you by the dozen that won't be especially threatening. Because of course, regardless of what kind of story it is, you want a lot of easily taken down monsters. And that makes it annoyingly easy to start to get complacent until the next big wake-up call. Sure, in the Chaos Shrine early on, Tyson and Wesker got taken down by random monsters, not the actual boss. The actual boss was pretty smooth to take down, but it's hard to remember that danger sometimes. Especially since the better your equipment and level, the less likely it is that the local monsters are gonna be all that dangerous for you. So, essentially, the random encounters can only ever really feel semi-annoying sources of money and experience, or will feel like brutal affairs that are more dangerous than the next boss due to their sheer numbers. There is no in-between. Anyway, apparently this is an elf village. On one hand, I kind of want to chuckle that the default elf look in this game is essentially Link from Legend of Zelda. On the other hand, I would have expected that an elf village would either look like Rivendell from Lord of the Rings, or the people would live in essentially tree houses like Wookiees in Star Wars. But no, it just looks like a pretty human village to me, probably because it was easier for them to make. Okay, so we've got an upgrade on the nunchucks. Guess that means Tyson is gonna get to keep some measure of equipment a little longer. Well, our bag certainly isn't anywhere near full. I'm sure that will change the further into the game we get when I feel more and more of a need to have numerous supplies for the numerous dungeon dives. But this early on, we can get away with having things pretty empty. It helps that they probably aren't expecting us to have much in our wallet this early on anyway. The church doesn't change in any way regardless of what town you enter it in. No cultural differences since we're entering a church in an elf town instead of human. No sense of world building, but then it's hard to find all that much of a flaw since we've got so little story in the game as a whole. Well, I know we're gonna need two, but no clue if it's going to mean anything if Tyson puts it on. Okay, can only afford one when 3 characters are claiming it's an upgrade for what they've currently got. And I somehow doubt that Tyson is telling the truth. And as I predicted based on last time, putting on armor of any kind isn't actually going to armor up our monk. It's just gonna lower his evasion rate. Why does the game bother to give us that little visual sign that it's going to benefit the character when it doesn't in any way, shape, or form? Yeah, really feels worth it to lose evasion for Boromir since he's meant to take a lot of hits with his high defense. Considering this is such a trendsetter for role players in general, it's nice to see just how much they did to make the different character classes feel distinct from one another. There's still some things to buy in the armor shop here. Something to keep in mind when we gain some more money later on. Hell, I doubt we'll be buying much of anything in the rest of the town. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised by them being effective. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. What I'll be surprised by is that it's not going to be the strongest metal in the game. There are weapon levels higher than Mithril, some of which would make for rather garbage weapons in real life. But we'll get to those when we get to them. We've still got the rest of the town to explore after all, even if we don't have the money to actually afford the things in them at this point. And then there's a castle near the town. Place your bets. How different will that castle seem from the human-made one in Cornelia? Because I can't help feeling they're gonna make it pretty much the same, since that would be easier to put into the game. Well, I'm assuming he's going to be our next major villain. Not that the bad guys have all that much going for them in this game. On the one hand, that seems a bit mean-spirited. But on the other hand, that does actually prompt some chuckles from me every time I see it. Every elf looks like Link, and we have a Link gravestone here. I wouldn't really say that The Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy really competed with one another. They felt a bit too different as far as I can tell. There was just way too much that was different about them. They may have both had Save the World stories and have gotten plenty of installments over the decades, but yeah, they do not really intersect that much. I'm pretty sure the only reason they referenced Legend of Zelda in this game is because Zelda had some damn good hits back then, and it felt like an easier target to crack a joke about than Mario Brothers in this kind of world. We already had a generalized joke about gaming in general at the time this game was released, with the fact that our opening goal of the game was to save a princess. In most other games, saving the princess is when the game is over. But around here, it's just how we get warmed up. Anyway, speaking of the prince, I somehow doubt we're going to be able to wake him up with a kiss, so I suppose we'll just have to settle for killing the guy who put the other guy into a curse. So, if the bad guy managed to put your prince to sleep and raid the treasure vaults, what are the guards around here for, anyway? I think we met that witch. Not that she's in any condition to do anything at the moment until we gain that crystal eye somehow. Anyway, thank you for confirming that Montoya is a woman, not a man. It doesn't really matter, but still, it's not like I could tell at a glance. I don't suppose you're doing anything magical to prevent his muscles from atrophying, are you? Or do elves have something that prevents that kind of physical degradation from inactivity? All I know about elves is that they're generally more magic-oriented, and they have absurdly long lives. I'm not really an expert in them, and in most fantasy worlds, I end up gravitating more towards the dwarves and the elves anyway. Speaking of dwarves, it's nice to read that in this game, they are avoiding the usual cliché of dwarves and elves having a rivalry of some kind. Though that was probably just a result of the writers wanting to keep things as simple as possible around here. No need to have any rivalries between good factions in a story that's not going to go into any kind of depth anyway. But I'm still going to bitch about the fact that this is the second kingdom we've gone to, and there's been no sense that there is anyone actively trying to save the world outside of the player character's party. They aren't even trying to solve their local problems. They're just holding out for some heroes to save the day, and we have no choice but to do so because we are the only active force in the world. We don't even have an active bunch of villains. Anyway, let's save for a moment before we push on from here. That is quite a sea of green around the elven village and castle. On the one hand, that really helps sell the idea that this is indeed an elven territory. On the other, wasn't one of the few plot points in this game that the earth was starting to wither? When you mention the earth decaying as a sign of the end times are coming, you shouldn't have a whole lot of very healthy-looking grass and healthy-looking forests before we manage to deal with the problem that's supposedly killing the ground's ability to support life. As usual, I'm sure I'm just overanalyzing something that wasn't meant to be thought about all that much, but hey, I'm having fun doing so. We're here to have fun, and I hope even at my most negative, I don't come across as an outright rage-baiting asshole or something along those lines. I just like analyzing things and thinking about various subjects, sometimes sending jabs at things that I might absolutely love. And if other people happen to have fun with what I'm saying as I'm playing these games, then good on them. Okay, wasn't expecting a small knife attack to finish that ogre off. After the sheer distance we sailed, we're still dealing with basic wolves? For some reason, I was thinking we were done dealing with them. But then I also thought we had spent more time in the game, considering the sheer amount of ground we've traveled through so far. Probably more my fault than anything else, since I am, for some reason, comparing this game's pacing with Pokemon's, because they both have very simple stories. And in Pokemon, I tend to take quite a while to go from one town to another. Still, we've gone to the third major town in the game and gotten a clear idea of what we need to do next. Even if we have to wander around a bit to find where Astos is, and we have no clue when we're gonna clear up the first crystal. Really wish I could tell what order our own guys are gonna throw attacks in. It kind of screws with my tactical thinking when the two absolute hardest hitters do some overkill, leaving the weaker physical attackers to hit the fresh next enemy. Not that we really need all that much tactical thought against the worms and ogres when we're pretty used to fighting them this far in and have some pretty solid gear. Still, it's worth mentioning. It's better than crowing about us dealing with yet another group of wolves just after that fight. Really hard to tell if we're getting closer to where we need to go, considering the in-game information we have to work with. All I know is we're moving in a general direction, not what we might be in that direction based on what we heard back in town. It wasn't very all that informative. Well, it certainly feels like Tyson is hitting harder than Boromir at this point. Not sure you get to jump around in celebration there, Boromir. You were still registering as paralyzed. Really? Only one ogre? I probably shouldn't feel kind of insulted by a random encounter, but still, we were running into worse on our way to Pravoka. So I suppose the gas are something fresh, even if we oddly fought against a group of 3 before running into a loner. Well, that looks like an important location. Just need to deal with a random spider before we investigate it. Well, this keep has seen better days. Hell, it's feeling pretty similar to the Chaos Shrine just at a first glance. Okay. So despite the mist in the area and how damaged everything looks, there's no random encounters in here. On one hand, that makes me feel some relief since we didn't end up in a fight after fight after fight every few steps as we explore the area. On the other hand, if this isn't a dungeon and there's nobody to talk to here, why is it here? This place doesn't have any of the signs of being a location that was included only in the PSP version of the game, that's for sure. Come on, is there anything in this place that gives it some importance to us right now? Ah, the king. Is there a reason you're in these ruins instead of your home with your comatose son, or is this a completely different kingdom? I'd be more concerned with reviving the prince rather than restoring a castle nobody bothers to come to anymore. But again, this game doesn't really have much of a plot, if any at all. So let's get out of here, save, and then look for the marsh cave that the king mentioned, since it's not like we have any other leads at the moment.